Hey guys, welcome back to Dark Souls 2. My name is Tom, and we have just come back from defeating the Lost Sinner. Now this is one of the 4 great souls that we need in this game to get to Drangleic Castle. The next one we have to get takes us through the Huntsman's Copse, and we'll head there in a second.
You have a cop that is more than most undead can say.
The next great soul we need to get is acquired by killing the old Iron King in the Iron Keep, but to get there we need to go through the Huntsman's Copse and then through the Earthen Peak. The thing is, we could have done this in any order, honestly, as in, we can do any Great Soul boss in any order, and I could have easily done the Lost Sinner last rather than first. It's just that the Lost Sinner was the closest one and the easiest to get to. Now, the next one is the Old Iron King, but we could easily just go to the Duke's Freya boss, or the Rotten, which is down the pit, or, well, Freya is a bit more difficult to get to because we have to go through the Shaded Woods and then through Brightstone Cove Seldora, 2 quite big areas. And here I'm just doing a few little errands around Majula, mainly just for Morlin, or Morglin, whatever, whichever way you want to pronounce his name. I'm not quite sure which one it actually is. And here, I was just basically looking through these shields to see if they actually had any lore relevance, but it turns out that they basically just tell you what the shield does and what its best purpose is in battle. Here you're probably wondering why I'm buying 12 of these hollow infantry armor chest pieces. This is to do with Morglin's questline. We're basically about to turn him into a giant selfish dick. And to do this, you need to spend upwards of 16,000 souls at his shop, being he is a vendor. So you must spend 16,000 souls, and then in between he will have different points at where his personality changes. So if you spend around 9,000 souls, or somewhere near that number, you're about to see it here, he will become slightly more impressed with how well he has done in his efforts to sell armor.
Oh, I was hoping that you would come. I've stocked some new things and I thought that you might be interested. They've been selling rather well, and I may step up operations soon. I'm surprising even myself, to be honest.
So here he's still quite placid and nice, but we haven't actually reached that 16,000 soul threshold yet. We're about to here when I buy the Elite Knight set, because this is the armor set that I'll be wearing for quite a while. And now that we've crossed this threshold, oh, and here I'm also looking at the penal set from the Lost Sinner. And recently someone said to me in the comments that the lore for the Lost Sinner relighting the first flame is in Shanalot's dialogue, and that this might be the case, and it might be in her dialogue. I'm unsure if, I don't actually remember that, but it could be the case. And it's most likely true, because it doesn't say that she relit the first flame in any of these descriptions in her armor set. It's really strange that they didn't put it in the armor sets itself and you have to get it from Shanalot. That's a little strange to me. Back to what Morglin's questline is, and I keep getting distracted. Yeah, here I was trying to kill myself to I need to lose souls, because another thing you can do with Morglin is, if you go to him with 0 souls, you can get a special armor set called the Armor of Horus, although this is the invisible armor set, and you get it for free. Basically, I'm just going to kill myself here to do that, so I can have 0 souls. If you do this, and you give him 16,000 souls, and you buy a lot of armor from him, he turns into an absolute dick. Morglin pretends to forget who you are, and then remembers when he says, "Oh, I've been awfully busy lately." He also tells us that most of his new wares may be out of our price range.
Sorry, have we met? Oh, sorry, it's just I've been awfully busy lately. Care to look over my wares? Please, be my guest. I upgraded my stock recently, although it may be a bit out of your reach.
So, now that we've given him all these souls, he starts to act pompous and pretentious, and he basically lets the money go to his head.
In a spot of bother, are we? Here, take this. My compliments.
This is where he gives me the Armor of Horus set because I have 0 souls, but he still has more dialogue, so I'll let it play through.
I'm rich! I'm rich! I don't need to go home anymore. Home? Home? Where is home? I'm rich! I don't... Home. Are you sure? Well, I may sell out while you're away.
Like I said, total dick. But I kind of feel sorry for him at the same time. Oh, we'll just go through this quickly. So, the armor of Horus was from the land of Jugo and was worn by their kings. Here we find out that Jugo is in fact a desert land, so that could explain why Ben Hart kind of dresses the way he does with the big capes or the big overcoat sort of thing, that it would protect him from the sand in the deserts of Jugo. And as you can see, it's invisible armor. So basically, the way to get the full set of armor that isn't invisible is to kill an NPC that drops it. But it's a very low drop rate and you have to bonfire ascetic every time you want to try again for another piece. Anyway, to finish up on Morglin, basically he ends up forgetting where he even came from, which, if you don't remember, was a place called Volgin, which is where the Falconeers also came from, or the Falconers rather. It's just easier for me to say Falconeers. But here we're about to meet Lycia again.
Oh, hello. This room is not as it seems. There are two, not one pathways leading out. And only this lovely thing reveals the other path. And this, you lovely thing, only runs on miracles. Shall I provide you with one?
To me it sounds like Lycia has the same voice actress as Sweet Xiaoqua, but I'm not certain on that, so I'll have to check that out at the end credits.
Miracles, you must have strong faith in the gods. Miracles began as tales told by gods. We preserve their will with law, pray to their greatness, and are blessed in return. You must nourish your faith.
Okay, so Lycia says that this thing operates on miracles when in fact it doesn't. It actually operates on something called the Rotunda Lockstone that we get when we kill her later on in an invasion. But first, to do that, we need to find something called the Cracked Eye Orb. We don't get that till a bit later on, and I won't be doing all these little things until the very end of the game anyway.
May the power of miracles be with you.
I keep getting interrupted when I talk about Morglin, so I'll try to finish it up quickly here before we reach the next NPC. Morglin may actually... It's unclear if he is infected with the undead curse, but seeing as he's starting to lose his memories, and the fact that we can also deduce that memory loss is one of the first stages of turning undead, or hollowing rather, he could in fact have contracted the undead curse somehow, whether it be through souls or something else. But seeing as we are giving him souls, I think we are actually keeping his hope alive.
I don't know who you are, but leave me be. The frailty of the weak disrupts the dark. Leave me alone. I'm interested in one thing, dog. You haven't the gift.
This elitist is known as Falcon the Outcast. He is basically the one we go to if we want to learn hex spells, or at least buy hex spells. But unfortunately, once again, it's kind of my own fault. I don't have enough intelligence and faith to talk to him and get all his dialogue. I probably should have thought of this when I was starting this playthrough, seeing as I can't actually get all the dialogue in the game until I have a build that has somewhere above 10 int and 10 faith. It's not a big deal, I can always respec later on, but that just means we won't be able to get those pieces of dialogue until I do that. But it would have been a nice touch to add that you could have talked to them without having 10 intelligence or 10 faith. It's just a small little annoyance in the game that could have been changed quite easily. But like I said, not a big deal, we can always come back to it at the end. I just would have rathered to do it all in order of, like, the order of progression, and when we meet those NPCs naturally, rather than forget about them halfway through the game and then come back to them right at the end and talk to them about stuff that was already irrelevant by that point. Anyway, you've probably noticed that we are in a new location called the Huntsman's Copse, and here I was just looking at the prisoner's hood, just to show you that it is in fact an item that raises item discovery, and also that it's said to be worn by hollows, which I wanted to look at because earlier in this playthrough I was referencing how the Dark Dwellers sometimes drop those items. So I just wanted to show you it here in the description for it, so you could see that it in fact does say that these articles of clothing were worn by hollows. So it could be in fact the case that those Dark Dwellers were once human. Also, just looking up and around, I can see that they've added new enemy placements and kind of new surprise attacks, which is quite awesome because this area is like a kind of like assassiny, like rogue level. There's rogues and stuff in this like level design. As you see right here, this one goes for a surprise attack. There are a lot more of those in this level now, and I think they work quite a lot better than they did originally, because these ones actually take me by surprise, where in the original game you could actually see where they were coming from, and everything happened like right in front of your eyes rather than coming from behind you and actually legitimately surprising you, which is really good to see. It's good to see that they're changing up not only the enemy placements but how the enemies approach. So some lore about the Huntsman's Copse. We've talked about it previously in some other parts, just talking about the relation it has to some other instances of lore in the game. And here this actually surprised me quite a bit. Usually this enemy is at the corner previous to this one, so I wasn't expecting that at all. But anyway, we have talked about the Huntsman's Copse before, but not really the purpose of it within the instance of its own right. So what I'm going to do here is I'll just read off the wiki for the summation of the lore, and the quickest way I can get through it, and then I will explain how this kind of came to be. When the undead curse started spreading all over Drain Lake, the Huntsman's Copse was used as an undead hunting ground. The Iron King presided over the hunts, and the many cells that are encountered in this area were used for imprisoning the undead. The undead hunts came to an end when the curse of undeath decimated almost the entire population of Drain Lake, and hollow captive undead, rogues, skeletons, and other dangerous creatures freely wander the copse. So this summation may raise a lot of questions, mainly being, why did the old Iron King feel the need to hunt undead? Well, just take a minute to think about it. If you could hunt man, the most dangerous sport in the world, and undead people can't die, you would have entertainment for millennia, forever. You would have something to entertain you, a hunt that would go on forever. I suppose this was the Iron King's reasoning behind doing this. It was kind of entertainment for his kingdom. They would go out, hunt people, but those people would never die. So the hunt would just restart again, or rather carry on forever, and this would never be found lacking. On the other hand though, it may have not been to do with entertainment at all, and it may have just been to do with holding back the undead curse as best they could. I mean, sure, it probably would have been entertaining for them at the same time, because they probably would have been a bit sadistic after dealing with the undead curse for so long, but I mean, they would have had to hold the undead curse back somehow, and the Huntsman's Copse may have been the first line of defense in doing so. Gathering up as much undead as they could, putting them in one location, and then hunting them over and over again to kill them, so they would always stay in this location and not wander around. So if they kill the undead, sure, they don't die, but at least they can contain them to one area. But unfortunately, this didn't end up happening, and as we can see with Drain Lake as it is now, the undead curse ran rampant throughout the land, and basically decimated everything. But there is also another part to the Huntsman's Copse that we haven't talked about yet, which is Undead Purgatory. And we will go there later, so I'll talk about it more then, but basically just to summarize its lore, the Undead Purgatory is the Colosseum that we see off to the distance in this area. The Undead Colosseum, a boss called the Executioner's Chariot, reigns over the Undead Purgatory, and he basically acts as a warden in that area for undeads in prison. So it's a little like the Lost Bastille, but the old Iron King was responsible for sending people to both the Lost Bastille and the Undead Purgatory, along with Huntsman's Copse. The Undead Purgatory is kind of a step up from the Huntsman's Copse and the Lost Bastille. It's basically another prison where undead are taken to be tortured. I don't have really any idea why he would want to torture undead. It may have just been because that's what was hip and cool at his time, but I highly doubt it. There probably is a better explanation for why he wanted to torture undead souls, but I don't think the game actually gives us a good explanation of it, which is unfortunate. Also, these guys, well, the guy that I just killed rather, is known as an undead torturer or undead hunter. They wield 2 sickles that inflict quite a bit of bleed damage if they hit. Basically, the lore surrounding these guys is that there used to be hunters within the Old Iron King's hunting regiment that would, well, you guessed it, hunt undead during the hunts that the Old Iron King put on. But unfortunately, they have all gone hollow, just like everyone else in this area. And here we also see some of the cells that the undead were also once prisoners in. Now, I think there's about three of these cells in this location that you can go into to find items. There's one there that you go up above and jump into, and then there's 2 here that you can actually walk into. Now, this one is just a mace, I believe, or something along those lines. Another one of them is a Sublime Bone Dust, guarded by a Cyan Knight, which is the one we drop into. And that one actually, well, there's a lot of things that have changed in this game that have scared the crap out of me when they first happened because they're such a surprise. But in a second, and right here, you'll notice that there's an item in the middle of that field right there. That is guarded by the Forlorn Invader. And we're about to see him again in a second. But the thing with the Forlorn is that he will invade in a lot of locations around Drain Lake. And every time we kill him, well, here we are right now with him. Every time we kill him, we will be able to buy a piece of his armor from Strayed. So we have to kill him 5 times to get his gloves, boots, chest piece, helmet, and then sword. And the sword is what I really want, because that's what I'm going to be trying to make a build around. And honestly, I haven't looked at its stats yet on the wiki, but I hope it scales with strength, because I plan to go into a strength build, or maybe even a kind of strength mixed with DPS build after we get to the DLC. And also with these butterflies, if you stand too close to them, they will produce a poison cloud and will poison you, as you see here. And they're scattered all over the cops as well, so you got to be careful where you walk. You can just kill them with a bow and arrow, because they die quite easily in probably 1 hit, or 2, I think. Depends what arrows you use. If you use poison arrows, it takes a little more to kill them because they have high poison resistance, but you should be able to kill them no problem. And this little scamp right here that's walking all the way up here is trying to bait me into a trap, a trap set by the rogues in this area, the undead rogues. If I would have followed him up from the very bottom, I would have gotten jumped by rogues over to the left there, but fortunately I took a different route and followed him up the side rather than the intended path, and they didn't end up surprising me as they should have. So I just killed them here, and got more poison arrows. And if you look up above there, you can see the sneaky little rogue trying to jump down on me when I pull the lever. I was just wandering around here for a bit, testing what it would take to bring him down, whether it be just standing below him or having to pull the lever. I tried to see if I had any throwable items, but it turns out I didn't, unluckily, because I think it's when he jumps down when you actually pull the lever. I tried to pull it here and then rolled away to see if just activating the function would make him drop down, but the reason I was so hesitant was because I thought he had like a poison dagger, so when he stuck you with the dagger you would become poisoned, and I didn't think I had any poison resistance items, or items that cure poison, so I was kind of hesitant to actually activate that. If anyone that's played Demon Souls remembers the Tower of Latria and those Iron Maidens, when you would open one and then someone would jump out and stab you and you would get poisoned, I kind of thought it was like that. I kind of remembered that Hollow having a poison dagger, so if anyone knows the feeling of hesitation on those Iron Maidens, then that's kind of what it was like just then. That's kind of the feeling. Anyway, I jumped into some shit right here, and I thought I was gonna get wrecked, honestly. I did not expect that rogue to jump in after me. That was not expected, and the Cyan Knight was definitely not expected. I don't know, like, why put this here, of all places? Well, I suppose the element of surprise, and it worked quite well. Did not expect a close range battle with a Cyan Knight like that. But the good news is that we now have a second Sublime Bone Dust, which means we can upgrade our Estus Flask and how much it refills of our HP to an even higher rate. And once again here, just testing out Fashion Souls, seeing if the Cyan Knight armor class or armor set rather, would be a good fit for my character, and it turns out that the elite armor looks better. And here I'm just going into the Cyan Knight's description, saying Sir Cyan was widely known as the kingdom's most loyal knight, or leal knight, and when the giants invaded he volunteered to lead the advance party, but was slaughtered most dishonorably. This goes to show why the king did this. He was the king's most favored knight, and King Vendrick commissioned replicas of Cyan's armor to other soldiers that he found to be worthy. So, this is basically Cyan's backstory. There is a theory that Cyan is in fact the Mirror Knight in Drain Lake Castle. This is not confirmed, it's just a theory, but this theory comes from the Cyan Knights being able to use electricity on their weapons, and the Mirror Knight being able to do the same. It could be possible that the King Vendrick, took Cyan's soul upon his death and put it into the Mirror Knight's body. Once again, unconfirmed, and we're also about to meet another NPC soon named Creighton, who is in that lockaway there. But unfortunately we don't have the key, so we have to go and find it. And to do that, we have to go fight an NPC invasion. Those of you who have played Dark Souls 2 will remember this NPC invasion as being Merciless Rowena. She is really easy to kill in Dark Souls 2 because basically you can just push her off a ledge, but in this version you actually get to fight her in a more contained area within a bigger battlefield. But unfortunately, she is still just as easy because she only has a small shield, and if you have a wide swinging sword, you can just keep her at bay by swinging again and again and again, and she won't be able to hit you. Even with her jump attack, you can knock her out of the animation, like that. Anyway, I just have a few little things to say about Cyan and that theory. Another thing that kind of connects them a little bit is the fact that the Mirror Knight is the one who guards the entrance to the Shrine of Amana, and essentially is known as being another roadblock for Nashandra. If Nashandra wanted to get to the Shrine of Amana, she would have to go through the Mirror Knight. With this being the case, it's easy to see that the Mirror Knight may have been one of the king's most loyal subjects, just as Cyan was, thus tying them together in that way as well. And here I'm just looking at the Warlock mask. Basically, this will come about later on when we learn more about Aldia and Aldia's Keep, but I'm showing it here just so I don't forget about it. Basically, Warlocks in Aldia, or Aldia's Keep rather, were once normal ritualists or clerics, essentially. And they became warlocks through experimenting on themselves and imbibing themselves in rituals in magic in Aldia's Keep. So that's how they became like that. Obviously, Merciless Rowena was a warlock at Aldia, but she was originally probably a cleric or something along those lines. There's not much lore surrounding her since she's just a random NPC invasion. So we're going to talk to Creighton here, and he's going to tell us a little bit about Pate. But as we saw before, talking to Pate, he actually did warn us about certain things, so it could be that Creighton is lying. And if the skeletons next to Creighton aren't enough to indicate that he is dangerous, then his dialogue will, because as you can see here, there is a liar ahead.
Who are you? I thought you were that bastard for a moment. You've set me free. Now I can find him. The cheeky prick. He won't know what hit him. I am Creighton of Mirror. I travel from land to land to hone my blade. I've heard this land was full of danger. I thought it would suit me perfectly. I joined forces with a man on the way, but he was no more than a backstabbing knave. He took the first chance he had to try and off me. I decided to set a trap for him here. But then I got trapped myself. I can't believe that I was so dense. Thank the stars that you came along. You be careful of him. Pate, I think he said. He wears this rather unusual ring. You'll know it when you see it. I've seen his type before. He kills entirely for the pleasure of it. I'm sure I won't be his last victim. The man's better off dead, I tell ya. He's a slick talker, so don't let him fool you. Pate, the man with a strange ring. Watch out for the slimy rat. And don't you believe a word he says. I'll find the common footpad and put an end to his roguery.
If you couldn't tell, yes, Creighton is lying. And we learn the fist pump gesture.
Pate.
Pate is the good one in this situation. Pate warned us that the gate we were going into would close behind us, and the reason for him locking Creighton in this place was probably because Creighton was going to stab him in the back. Creighton also tells us that he is from a land called Mirror. Who else do we know that is from a land called Mirror? That's right, Lucatiel. So Lucatiel and Creighton both share the same homeland. We also see one more person in this game from Mirror, and that is Azlatiel, Lucatiel's brother, but he, like we learnt before in a previous episode, is an enemy invasion at Aldir's Keep. And as this little hollow guy runs away, that is going to be my indicator to start fast forwarding to the Skeleton Lord boss. I'm going to prepare my lore for that right now, so I'll see you guys in a second. Okay, so here we are at the Skeleton Lords. Now, they are actually weak to magic, so if you have aromatic ooze or a magic enhancement for your sword, I suggest you use it. It'll make this fight go a hell of a lot faster. Even though the fight is easy by itself, you have to watch out for these skeletons that come from the Skeleton Lords dying. The three lords themselves are actually incredibly easy to kill one-on-one. But when the hordes of little skeletons come out, you need to be really careful not to die by getting surrounded by them. The best way to do this fight is to be constantly moving around the area no matter what. Never stop moving, unless you need to heal, but make sure if you need to heal that you're behind one of these pillars. Other than that, just keep on moving around the area and kill the skeletons one by one as they come your way. If you can get a group attack or hit them in a group like this, do that. But if you're on low health or feel like you're getting surrounded as I am here now, run the fuck away. Chances are, if you get stuck like that again, you might not be able to escape the second time around. Okay, so we're almost finished this episode here, and we're in the boss fight, so let's talk about the boss. And not the boss strategy, I mean, let's talk about the lore. Now, the Skeleton Lords kind of act as kind of overseers of the Huntsman's Copse, but unfortunately they have all turned hollow as well, and they're now skeletons. They've kind of built their own kingdom in the Huntsman's Copse on bones and corpses that they have killed here. But of course, they didn't start out this way. Originally, they were servants of the Old Iron King, commissioned with hunting down and imprisoning undead, just as many of the jailers were in the Undead Purgatory and Huntsman's Copse, along with the Lost Bastille. But unfortunately, nothing lasts, and the Undead Curse overtook these people as well, along with the Skeleton Lords. Later on, we'll get to see their items and the armor set for the Skeleton Lords, and one thing you will notice is that they were not real lords when the Iron King commissioned them to do this. They were just servants of him given a task. But now they've become lords in their own right, and they kind of reign over the Huntsman's Copse as sorts of kings. And the Huntsman's Copse, in its own right, has become a kind of kingdom for them to rule over. Now, one other thing you'll notice when we look at their armor set is that their crowns are made of bones. So, like I said, they were made lords in their own right. They weren't originally lords, so they had to make their own crowns. And you can kind of see it here. It's very hard to see because their crowns are so thin, but they are in fact made of bones. So they took up this title, and they took up this kingdom for themselves. And basically, well, they didn't really usurp it, but this place was originally ruled by the Old Iron King as well. So they kind of did usurp this area, I suppose. And here we also see the bone wheels from Dark Souls 1. I'm pretty sure, and thank God, this is the only area in the game where they appear. Those of you that have played Dark Souls 1 and have been to the Painted World of Ariamis and other locations in it as well, will know that bone wheels in Dark Souls 1 are terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. They can kill you in probably one hit if they get lucky. And there's also a point in Dark Souls 1 where you go down into a sort of underground waterway sort of thing in the Painted World of Ariamis, and there's about 5 or 6 bone wheels down there that can all mob you at the exact same time. So it's kind of like jumping out of the way of a moving truck that's coming right for you, except there are 5 or 6 different trucks that are coming at you from all different angles. That's kind of what dodging bone wheels in Dark Souls 1 is like. Actually, I think a better analogy for it would be that it's like running across a motorway or a highway and trying not to get hit by any cars. Although, if you do that area correctly and be kind of stealthy in that part in the Painted World of Ariamis, you can get through it no problem. Like, you can take them out one by one. But that's enough about bone wheels. We're about to meet Chloanne, the daughter of Lenegrast the blacksmith in Majula. And I was just looking down here to see that they've added a few new enemies to Harvest Valley.
Are you a traveller? I'm Chloanne, an ore stone trader. I travel about collecting rare stones, which I sell to make my living. I never planned to visit this God's forsaken place. But I don't know. I just sort of ended up here. I must have just wandered in. But now that I'm here, I've been scouting around for rare bits. Oh, don't look at me like that. Many of these stones are quite useful. For instance, certain stones are used in smithing. Ah, now your ears prick up. I've extras if you can pay. This is my trade, after all.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get Chloanne back to Majula, and she doesn't actually know that Lenegrast is her dad. She just thinks that he looks like him. But Lenegrast himself confirms that he is.
I came here in search of rare stones, but the place is nothing like I was told. All this poison, and you can't get very far inside. Don't just go haplessly wandering about. These stones may look all the same, but to the trained eye, each is unique. Some of them are used to smith weapons and armor, and some unique stones provide special benefits. Some of them are extremely rare and should be used with great thrift. None of the differences are easily spotted, but I've learned quite a lot, really. Drang Lake. How is it that I ended up here? It's funny. I can't seem to remember. I've searched every nook and cranny here. I suppose it's time to move on. Perhaps we'll meet again, if we live that long.
The one thing we can take away from this conversation, other than Chloanne knows her shit about Titanite, is that it seems as if everyone that comes to Drang Lake forgets their reason for doing so, or at least doesn't know how they came to be here. But we'll have to tackle all that in the next episode, because unfortunately this one has to come to an end. As always, thanks for watching guys, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next episode.